How a third stimulus check could differ from your first and second payments. Although there's no guarantee, a third stimulus check certainly appears to be on the horizon. Many people thought the second round $600 checks were too little, too late. As a result, the push for a third round of payments began before the law authorizing the second round payments was even signed into law. And now that Democrats will soon control both chambers of Congress and the White House, a third stimulus check almost seems inevitable. But there are a lot of open questions about third stimulus checks. For instance, most of the chatter in Washington, D.C. concerning another round of direct payments is focused on providing $2,000 checks. But, despite all the talk, we don't know yet if that will ultimately be the base amount for any third round payment. And how much will you get for your kids? Who will qualify? How will they be calculated? These are just some of the questions that will need to be answered as Congress and President-elect Biden hammer out an agreement. Larger base amount for third stimulus checks. The base amount of first-round stimulus checks under the CARES Act was $1,200. That amount was cut down to $600 for second-round payments under the COVID-related Tax Relief Act. But the base amount will probably be something different for third-round stimulus payments, although it's still likely to be higher than either the first or second-round payments. As we already mentioned, everyone in Washington is talking about $2,000 checks. So, there's a strong possibility that that will be the eventual base amount for third-round payments. And that amount would make a lot of people very happy and clearly satisfy all the politicians' promises. Families could get more money in their third stimulus check. For first-round stimulus payments, families received an extra $500 for each dependent child age 16 or younger. That amount was increased to $600 for second-round payments. There's a good chance the additional amount will be something other than $500 or $600 for a third stimulus check. The Cash Act, which the House passed in December, would have increased the second-round extra payment from $600 to $2,000 per eligible child. It would have done this by authorizing a separate $1,400 payment per child. The HEROES Act, which was passed by the House back in May, would have upped the extra amount to $1,200 per dependent. While we don't think the extra payment for third-round payments will go as high as $2,000, the Cash Act and HEROES Act show that some lawmakers are willing to give more to families with kids. More families could get an extra amount in their third stimulus check. For both the first and second round stimulus payments, families received an additional $500 or $600 respectively for each dependent child age 16 or younger. However, families with older children, including college students age 23 or younger, or with elderly parents living with them, got nothing. Zero. Zip. Zilch. That could very well change with third-round stimulus checks. Several of the bills moving through Congress since the CARES Act dumped the age limitation for dependents. Under the HEROES Act, HILS Act, and the Cash Act, extra payments would have been allowed for anyone you could claim as a dependent on your tax return. Regardless of their age, fewer people could qualify for a third stimulus check. Wealthier Americans didn't get a first or second round stimulus check. That's because payments were gradually decreased to zero if you're single, married filing a separate tax return, or a qualifying widow and had an adjusted gross income on your 2019 tax return above $75,000. Married couples filing a joint return started to see their stimulus check shrink if their GI exceeded $150,000. For people who claimed the head of household filing status, payments were reduced if your GI topped $112,500. However, that still means a lot of families with higher incomes and who may not have suffered financially during the pandemic still received something. That's especially true for families with children. For example, a family of 5 with a 2019 AGI up to $228,000 still got a first-round stimulus check. For the second-round payments, a family of 5 got a check as long as their 2019 AGI didn't exceed $110,000. But when the Cash Act was up for debate in the Senate, the Republicans' main objection was that stimulus checks would be sent to wealthy people who didn't need the money if the bill passed. More recently, Sen. Joe Manchin suggested that he won't support a third round of stimulus checks unless payments are targeted and only sent to Americans who actually need them. To satisfy these concerns, the phase-out rules could be adjusted for third-round payments so that fewer people with higher incomes receive a check. Number of payments could be increased. Both stimulus checks sent so far have been one-time payments. The HEROES Act, HILS Act, and Cash Act also called for single payments. However, because the bills keep coming every month, some lawmakers have pushed for monthly stimulus payments for the duration of the pandemic. For example, one bill introduced last year by Representative Ro Khanna and Representative Tim Ryan would have given every qualifying American over the age of 16 a stimulus payment of up to $0 each month for up to a year. The odds of Congress authorizing monthly payments are very slim, but not entirely out of the question. The idea is popular among progressive. For instance, a recent survey by Data for Progress showed support for monthly $2,000 stimulus payments among 65% of the people polled. Andrew Yang's nonprofit advocacy group, Humanity Forward, is pushing for monthly payments, too. If there's enough pressure put on lawmakers, we might see some movement in this direction. Again, it's not likely, but it's not impossible either. Third stimulus checks could be based on 2020 tax returns. First-round stimulus checks were based on either your 2018 or 2019 tax return, whichever was most recently filed when the IRS began processing your return. If you didn't file a return for either of those 2 years, you could send the IRS the necessary information through an online portal. If you received benefits from the Social Security Administration, Railroad Retirement Board, or Department of Veterans Affairs, the IRS got the information it needed from those other government agencies. If the IRS didn't get your information at all, you have to claim the amount due as a recovery rebate credit on your 2020 federal tax return. Second stimulus checks are based on your 2019 return. If you didn't file a return, you didn't use the non-filers portal to get your first round payment, and you don't receive government benefits, then you'll have to claim the recovery rebate credit on your 2020 return to get your money. The IRS is not using the non-filer portal for second stimulus payments. The IRS is expected to begin accepting 2020 tax returns in late January or early February. Since third-round stimulus checks probably won't be delivered before then, your third-round payments will most likely be based on your 2020 tax return. If it has already been filed, or on your 2019 return if you haven't filed your 2020 return when the IRS is ready to send your payment, you might not need a Social Security number to get a third stimulus check. If you don't have a Social Security number, you didn't qualify for a first-round stimulus check under the CARES Act. In fact, if you're married, the CARES Act said that both you and your spouse must have a Social Security number to get a first-round payment. You also couldn't get an extra $500 per qualifying child tacked onto your first stimulus check if both parents didn't have a Social Security number. These rules were loosened by the COVID-related Tax Relief Act. For second-round payments, you can get a second stimulus check if you have a Social Security number, but your spouse doesn't. You also qualify for the additional $600 per qualifying child payment with your second stimulus check if you have a Social Security number, but your spouse doesn't. Plus, the COVID relief law also made the new rule applicable to first-round payments, too. So, if one spouse has a Social Security number and the other one doesn't, they can claim up to $1,100 plus an additional $500 for each qualifying child as a recovery rebate credit on their 2020 tax return if they were denied a first-round payment because they both didn't have a Social Security number. Child support may be taken from third stimulus checks. If you were behind on child support payments when first-round stimulus checks were being sent, the IRS could have taken your stimulus money and given it to the person you owed. As it turns out, the IRS went a bit too far and ended up taking stimulus payments from about 50,000 spouses of people who owed child support to a third person. They paid that money back, though. Congress reversed course for the second round of stimulus checks. Under the COVID-related Tax Relief Act, the IRS can't take second-round payments to pay overdue child support. While this certainly helps people behind on their payments, it hurts people who are not getting the child support they're owed. Dead people could receive a third stimulus check. The CARES Act didn't say anything about whether deceased people should or shouldn't receive a stimulus check. Lawmakers probably just didn't think about it. As a result, as the IRS was rushing to deliver payments as soon as possible, over 1 million first-round stimulus checks were sent to people who were dead. The IRS later asked for the money back, but it's not clear how many family members actually followed the tax agency's instructions and sent the money back. When it came time to draft the COVID-related Tax Relief Act, Congress was a little more careful. They included a provision in the new law that specifically says that anyone who died before January 1, 2020, is not eligible to receive a second stimulus check. In addition, the IRS was granted access to the Social Security Administration's Death Master File, which should cut down on the number of second-round stimulus checks inadvertently sent to people who are no longer with us. Earlier payments could be retroactively increased. It's worth mentioning that the law authorizing a third stimulus check could also retroactively increase or expand eligibility for first and second round payments. There is precedent for this. As mentioned earlier, the COVID-related Tax Relief Act, which authorized the second round of stimulus checks, changed the first round eligibility rules for married couples that only had one Social Security number between them. The HEROES Act was chock full of retroactive provisions. That bill would have changed the first round rules regarding extra payments for dependents, the Social Security number requirement, and garnishment. The Cash Act would have retroactively amended the amount of second round payments, too. Congress might want to go back and change a few other rules now for first and second round payments. Who knows what types of retroactive changes lawmakers might cook up, but don't be surprised to see a few of these provisions in a new law.